All over the world, we're experiencing record-breaking temperatures that have already claimed the lives of over 1,100 in Europe alone. And those continue to scorch much of the US right now. I'm sitting in New York City, sweating right now, half backwards and everything, trying to stay cool. And we're only still in July. But what effects does such extreme heat have on the body? And what can we expect to see in terms of mental and physical symptoms? Today, I'm having a good friend of mine and my co-founder, Dr. Mark Iwanicki, join us to discuss the true ramifications and potentially dangerous temperatures on our biology. Dr. Mark, great to see you. Are you staying cool where you are right now?
Yes, thanks for having me on. Again, I'm staying cool. It's relatively cool here at the center. Yeah, it's not bad here in Long Island either. It hasn't been that hot. This weekend was pretty bad, but today it's actually pretty good.
I think we got through the worst parts of the heat wave, but as many people said, this is only July. Temperatures are pretty high. People are dying in Europe. I'll be actually traveling to Portugal tomorrow, and that's where a lot of people have been impacted. Now, the first thing I wanted to talk about is kind of the most, I think, important one. And I'm actually going to take a sip of my Gerolsteiner before I ask this because I am very thirsty. And that is about hydration. What should people be looking to do? Is it excess hydration? Is it something in specific? Is it sports drinks? What should people be looking to drink because they're hot, sweaty, and obviously we're starting to get overheated?
Yeah, so when your body's experiencing excessive heat, the blood rushes to the periphery, rushes to our skin to kind of cool it off, because that's the access to the cool air is what the body wants to do. So when it does that, it also activates the sweating response. So your body starts to sweat in order to cool down as well. When you're sweating, in that sweat is a lot of sodium, a lot of chloride, a lot of electrolytes, a lot of minerals that the body kind of releases through that sweat. When there's excessive heat, you're losing a lot of water and using a lot of minerals through your sweat. So it's important to replenish those. Drinking a lot of water. Usually, people generally, we recommend people drink around half their body weight in ounces in water. That's as a general rule we say per day. So, on average, let's say that's equals about 60 ounces of water, usually 1 to 2 liters of water per day. So that equals about, 8 ounce glasses, roughly kind of what you can kind of look to kind of measure that. So 8 ounce glasses of water per day. And, at the same time, you want to be getting some minerals in. So it's a good idea. Sometimes I'll tell patients you take a pinch of a Himalayan sea salt or Himalayan salt or just regular sea salt and put it a tiny little pinch with a little bit of water. That provides, a lot of the sodium and chloride that your body's losing through the sweat. Coconut water is another favorite of mine. You can do coconut water. If some people say it's a little bit too sweet, you could dilute it in a little bit of water. Coconut water is very high in electrolytes, magnesium, potassium, sodium chloride, all the electrolytes your body is losing through the sweat. So that's great. Gatorade, Pedialyte, those are okay. I know I generally tell patients stay away from those because those are generally much higher in sugar. And so we don't want to, be replenishing with a lot of sugar, because it can throw off the body's metabolism. Sugar in general isn't a great idea. So I generally stay away from those. If that's the only thing you have access to, then you can do some Gatorade or some Pedialyte. Another great option is mineral waters, like you're drinking Gerolsteiner or San Pellegrino. The waters that are naturally high in minerals, they have they're high in sodium, they're high in magnesium, phosphorus, bicarb. So those are great. You don't have to drink all your 8 ounce, all your 60 ounces as mineral water, but even just 1 or 2 glasses is a great addition, so that you're not, you're just drinking water. One of the dangers of just drinking too much water is something called hyponatremia, where your body becomes so diluted that the sodium in the blood actually leaves circulation, and you get something called hyponatremia, where you get a drop in blood pressure. And that's actually really dangerous, actually can kill you. So you definitely don't want to make sure that you're replenishing with minerals and electrolytes. I actually know quite a few people who became hyponatremic from drinking just a lot of just plain water. Because they were hearing all this stuff about drinking water, and they weren't replenishing with electrolytes and minerals. And they became hyponatremic, had to go to the hospital. Get IV fluids for that. So it is a real danger. And so make sure that if you're drinking water, you are replenishing with minerals as well, like we mentioned.
How do you feel about electrolyte powders? It's kind of a little bit of the rage right now. I'd say I just had a friend that reached out. He's like, hey, what's your favorite electrolyte powder? And I told him good water, a little bit of Himalayan sea salt, and squeeze a lemon in there for all the other vitamins. And I was like, and that's a great start. Don't just jump in. But I want to hear from you. That was just my opinion. What is your opinion of electrolytes?
Yeah, I think, that's always a great kind of free option to do. A lot of these electrolyte powders are generally higher in magnesium, which you can't get. And, the amount of magnesium you're going to get in Himalayan salt or sea salt is pretty minuscule. Yep. But if you have a powder, you're going to get high levels of magnesium. You're going to get high levels of potassium and phosphorus, which is great too. I mean, it has all these other hosts of other benefits. But if you're just talking about replenishing electrolytes that you've lost through sweat, those powders necessarily aren't, I wouldn't say that they're 100% necessary. I think they're great for all these other things you want benefits for. But if it's just to kind of replenish lost water, I don't know that they're that necessary. It also depends on the quality too. A lot of them have other junk in them. They're super processed. They come from weird places. So you have to make sure you're finding a good company, good, reliable company. We use here at the clinic, we use really high quality brands, Pure Prescriptions, Genestra, Thorn. These are all brands that we've tested that are really high quality. So I would go with that. Then something just kind of like off the street or something at a bodega or something. But
yeah, you're not telling them to have 5-hour energies and monster drinks, right?
No, those aren't great for a lot of reasons. A lot of those have really high in caffeine too, and that can throw off. Caffeine's a whole separate other issue, but they're also got food coloring and other chemicals and things, so they're not.
Let's go into that for a second. What about caffeine in the heat? I see a lot of people now switching over to iced coffees in the morning, but like chugging them down, right? Yeah. Because it's cold and you just slurp it with a straw, right? And You're getting more caffeine that way, I believe. I don't do iced coffees. I like it still hot, but talk about that.
Yeah, so caffeine is a diuretic, meaning it forces your kidneys to excrete water. And so the same goes for alcohol. They're both diuretics, so that you're losing a lot of water and electrolytes when you're drinking caffeine and alcohol. So it just adds to the burden. If you're super hot, you're losing more water. It feels like you're getting refreshed because you're drinking something cold. But ultimately what it's doing is causing more loss of water, more loss of electrolytes. So if you're going to be doing caffeine or alcohol, I would double up or include, whatever ounces you're having of that caffeine or alcoholic beverage. I would double that and then include on top of that the original base of water intake you need throughout the day. I would even do maybe like a 2-to-1. Like let's say you have 8 ounces of coffee, I would say add another 2 8 ounces or 16 ounces to offset that coffee, in addition to any alcohol that you're drinking. Yeah, so not the best ideas during a heat wave, although that's kind of what we think too. If we think about iced coffee and margaritas, it's hot out. That's what we want, but that's not the best idea in terms of hydration, keeping the body hydrated and full of electrolytes that it needs.
Yeah. And now if you go back to the mineral side of things, if you were to say, hey, could I just keep drinking my regular Poland Spring and take mineral supplementation? What would I be looking at? What should I be looking to supplement with minerals?
So the main mineral actually is sodium. So, sodium and chloride are the two main electrolytes your body needs. Basically every cell to conduct electricity, to conduct polarization of the cell membrane. So those are the big ones. And then, magnesium, potassium, phosphorus, those are, come second in line to that. So, those mineral capsules, mineral supplements, if they've got a good balance of all those, those are great. And just drinking, I wouldn't say, I would avoid anything in plastic bottles, just because plastic's a whole other issue, especially in the heat. Anything that's left in the heat, especially in plastic, the plastic is gonna potentially melt a little bit and get absorbed into the water. So all the BPA and all the nasty stuff that you wouldn't want for plastics is gonna get even be higher in water that's been left out in the sun or the heat. So I would stay away from plastics generally, but definitely in a heat wave and when it's hot out, you want to stay away from anything in any water and plastics.
It's one of the reasons I always go to Gerolsteiner, and Aquapana still does them in glass. And you could still buy them that way. But I agree with you. So many people don't realize once you start to heat that, it's volatile. It's giving off some, right? It's going into it. You have obesity.
You can even if you've had like water that's been out in the car for
gross.
It's disgusting because that's all the plastic chemicals you're tasting in it.
Yeah, you're tasting half that bottle is disintegrated into that. So it's like a medley of water and plastics, which is disgusting when you have it. Now, let's switch gears a little bit because, of course, hydration is incredibly important. But I have to say diet's very important as well. One of the things I know I've realized and a lot of people have mentioned, when you have a large, high protein type of meal, your body temperature usually goes up a bit more. So what should we be looking out for? Because that's exactly, if you talk about someone outside at a barbecue, you're having a hamburger, you're having the hot dogs, steaks, everything. And that's a lot of meat. And that does raise your temperature, doesn't it? So what should we be looking out for there?
Yeah. So, in Chinese medicine, we always look to make food recommendations seasonally. And so from a seasonal perspective, summertime is a lot of heat. You want to kind of avoid foods that are going to create excess heat in the body. So from Chinese medicine, that is more of the meats, chicken, steak, things like that, are going to be increasing heat in the body. So, more cooling foods, more fruits and vegetables, salads, even raw foods. Raw foods generally in Chinese medicine, we don't like raw foods because it can create issues with digestion. But the one time a year where raw foods are a little bit better is definitely the summertime. So I would focus more on that: salads, more vegetables, fruits, grains. I would say less. I would say meat in moderation. Definitely, you don't want to create an excess kind of heat burden on the body when you're trying to cool off. So definitely with that.
Yeah, and I remember even Nicole, our nurse who we work with, right? She shared that cucumber and watermelon, which are just truly hydrating, cooling type of fruits and vegetables that really assist us, give us lots of hydration. Add a lot of vitamins, phytonutrients in there that help us, antioxidants. So that was a great recipe as well. Just enjoy summertime foods that really are summertime foods, like watermelon, that are ripe then and everything, rather than just stack on meat and don't have those cooling foods. Now, if we look at something like sleep, because we don't usually associate heat with sleep, but from all the data I've seen and people I've spoken to, usually want to sleep in a somewhat cool room for the best quality of sleep. And luckily at night, it usually does get cooler as the sun sets. But in a heat wave, there's no reprieve sometimes. And people like in London are learning it could be pretty damn hard to sleep in the heat. But what does it do on the body when you're in an elevated temperature trying to sleep?
Yeah, so, our core temperature is around in Fahrenheit, 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. And actually, when we sleep, we actually fluctuate and we go down about 1 to 2 degrees Fahrenheit. And our brain actually needs that cooling off to happen in order to get into deep levels of sleep. So there are different phases of sleep. You have more light sleep, you have deeper sleep, you have REM sleep. To get into those deeper sleep zones and the REM sleep zones, you actually need a cooler body temperature. So, it's recommended to sleep in a cooler room. Ideally, it's around 65 degrees Fahrenheit is what they say is an ideal room temperature to get your body's core temperature down to where it needs to be 1 to 2 degrees in order to get those deep levels of sleep. If you're not doing that, then the brain actually can't go into those deeper levels of sleep. So you're kind of having restless sleep and you're not getting into those deep levels, and you're not having the full benefit of sleep if you're not getting into those deeper levels. So it's really important actually to sleep in a cool room. Some of the things you can do is obviously shades, keep the sun out for most of the day as you can, not just at night, but also during the day. Air conditioners, fans, sleeping with, very thin sheets, or even having a cool compress you could put on your neck and head can be good right before going to bed. But anything you can do to cool yourself down is really important, so that you're getting those deeper levels of sleep and regenerating and replenishing the brain.
What about cardiovascular health? Because you hear a lot about heat stroke. You see a lot of people still trying to work out outside, kind of push themselves a little bit. what would you tell people that may be even at a cardiovascular risk to do in this heat? Should they not be exercising at all? Should they just cool it for this time, literally like stop working out? Should they be doing certain other things aside from hydration and diet?
Yeah. So what happens is when you're really hot, the blood leaves the core and it goes into the periphery, into your skin to cool off your body. When that happens, you actually naturally have a lowering of blood pressure. And so in order to compensate for that, the heart actually increases the heart rate. So that's why, every time you have a fever and you're feeling hot, if you feel your heart rate is actually going up. For people who have an increased cardiovascular risk, that actually can be a danger. That increase in heart rate can actually increase the chances of a cardiovascular event, like a heart attack or stroke or anything like that. So for people who have cardiovascular risk factors, the excessive heat is actually can be really dangerous. Heat stroke is something a little bit different. Heat stroke is when the body loses the ability to cool off. It gets so hot that the sweating mechanism shuts down, and then the core temperature keeps going up and up and up, sometimes even past 104, 105, 106 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's really dangerous. At those temperatures, proteins in the body start denaturing. Proteins naturally have a specific shape and form that they need to have their function. When they become denatured, like the same way you would cook a chicken, the protein kind of disintegrates and falls apart. So all the proteins in the brain, then the immune system, everything kind of starts disintegrating, and you go with the heat stroke, and you actually can die and kind of lose function in that way. So so anyone with cardiovascular risk factors wants to be really careful not to exercise in the heat. Stay away. If you're going to exercise, definitely exercise indoors. And if you're noticing you're sweating a lot, that's a signal. Like once you start sweating, it's kind of gotten to the point where you're already losing a lot. So you want to catch it before then. So make sure you're staying hydrated before you start sweating, so that you have that kind of reserve there.
Switching from cardiovascular to something a lot of people don't associate with, this idea of the nervous system and the idea of actually keeping a cool head and trying to trigger more parasympathetic system. Because a lot of people, when you're under constant stress, like we are, your fear, you have so much going on and stress levels are up, you get yourself in a sympathetic state, which I know when, I'm sympathetic, I'm a sweater. My body temperature goes up. If I'm like in a state like now, like where it's like pressure or something like that, and it's hot, it's just going to flare up in me in a sense. But the idea of breathing and keeping a cool head, of doing certain techniques to be parasympathetic, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so one of the easiest, fastest, and most accessible ways to access the parasympathetic nervous system in the moment is your exhale. So when you're breathing, your inhalation has two modes. So the inhalation is a slightly more sympathetic state, and the exhalation is a more parasympathetic. So that's when we do a heart rate variability, we're looking to see it at how does that variation change of the sympathetic and the parasympathetic as you're breathing and exhaling with your heart. So one way to stimulate that parasympathetic more than the sympathetic is to take long exhales, and exhales should always be twice as long as inhales. And sometimes when we're stressed, we know when we feel it, we just focus on the inhale and we don't even think about the exhale. We're just like, everything's tight. We're just thinking about inhale. Whereas the opposite needs to happen when we want to go into parasympathetic. We need to slowly breathe out and have that be at a minimum twice as long as the exhale. So let's say you inhale for a count of 2, you want to exhale for at least a count of 4, so that you're predominantly triggering more the parasympathetic response than the sympathetic. And you're right, heat being in that environment and excessive heat is going to trigger more of that kind of nervous sympathetic response, which we don't want, which we have too much of in our society anyway. So remembering to breathe, remembering to drink our water, remembering to relax, remembering that it's not going to last forever. It's only, things change, seasons change. To take long, deep exhales, I think is a good reminder for everybody.
And as we wrap this up, I wanted to get your thoughts on a tip. I know Dr. James DiNicolantonio, we both know, talked about this, and I went into it, this extremity cooling, and cooling like, ice water or even ice in the palms, cooling that, or on the feet, or even back of the neck sort of thing. Would you recommend that as well if people are in this state where they're hydrated, they're just still hot, to just even run your hands under cold water? If you have a piece of ice, just put it in your palm, because that literally, does start to cool. Is that something you recommend?
Yeah. I mean, that's a great idea because, the majority of your blood, like I said, it goes into the periphery, goes into the arms, the legs, the skin to cool off. And so you're getting more circulation in those extremities, so you have more access to your blood to cool your blood in those areas. So the back of the neck, hands, the feet is a really great idea to, just use cool compresses, use cool water to cool off those areas. The wrists are a great way to access a large amount of blood. The ankles, the wrists, the back of the neck are great ways to areas we can focus on cooling the majority of the blood. So I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I even love the facial. Like, you just get a bucket and throw your face in the morning, and just cold showers, all of these things, a little Wim Hof without having to jump in a bucket full of ice. Yeah. But you could still have cooling effects.
Yeah, it's actually, so we like to, I love cool water, and I love cold plunges, but actually if you do a little bit more of a warm shower, a warm bath right before bed, it actually can make you feel cooler because it is bringing more of that blood to the surface, the periphery. So then when you leave that, you're actually having more of a cooling effect rather than a heating effect. Whereas if you're using cold water, you actually everything goes into the core, and is not as you don't have as much access to it in the periphery. So you don't after you're finished with that, you don't necessarily feel as cool. You may feel actually a little bit warmer as the body starts to try to release some of that heat. So just a tip. Some people they don't care. They just like cooler showers before bed. That's fine too if you feel comfortable with that. I wouldn't do like cold plunges right before bed. I would do lukewarm to cool water.
No, that's a good tip, because you'll start to feel that coolness then afterwards, which is what you're really going for, especially as you go to sleep. Hey, Dr. Mark, where could people learn more about you? Give them their Instagram handle where you post a lot of good stuff.
My Instagram, Dr. Mark, Dr._Mark Iwanicki. Find me there. You can find me nycam.com website, innovativemedicine.com website.
Awesome. I'll see you in a couple of weeks when I get back from a hopefully not overheated vacation, and I'll try and keep cool with all these tips. So thank you for coming on, my man.
You're very welcome.
All right. Well, whether or not the summer actually continues on this trajectory or not, I hope you feel more equipped to handle the heat with some of Dr. Mark's wisdom and tips for staying cool, staying healthy, and enjoying the summer sun. Until next time, stay cool and keep writing your own healing story.